Well, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you and with the Premier. And I have to say, it's rare that I go to one of these dinners and leave poorer than when I started. But that's actually a thing that happened tonight, which is how much I care about PragerU and why I'm so grateful to all of you for being here and supporting PragerU, which is an incredible organization. So we'll get to the tariff war in a little bit. I know that the Premier has taken some flack in her hometown and in all the hometown papers for even being on the stage with such as me, because I made the unfortunate error of making a joke about our soon-to-be 51st state. And this apparently did not go over amazingly well in Canada. And I just wanted to assure the Premier, just from the get-go, I am not interested in Dudley Do-Right. I feel no necessity to actually seize the great land of Canada and take it for the United States. Frankly, there are too many Canadians in it. And Canada is, in fact, an excellent ally to the United States. We'll get into that in a little while. I want to start.
And if I may, I come in peace. I am here to make peace with your people. And I have, when anyone asks me the question about the 51st state, and this room will appreciate that, you know that Canada tends to be a little bit more progressive. That would be like adding another California to your electoral system. And you would never have a Republican president in the White House again. So I would just caution you that it's probably best for us to just stay friends. And friends should never move in together, but we can still be very, very good friends.
Absolutely. Greenland is still on the table. Yes on Greenland, maybe Cuba, right? But yeah, I don't think we need Canada. They can't even spell color. Anyway, so let's talk about the situation in Canada politically. So obviously, when we in the United States look up to our northern neighbors, America's hat, when we look up to our northern neighbors, one of the things that we see is an enormous amount of radical leftism. But we are seeing in recent years a backlash to that. Maybe you want to talk about, particularly on the social side, what kind of radicalism you're seeing from the Trudeau, now the Carney government, and how exactly Canadians are responding to that.
Yeah, I can tell you part of the reason we no longer have Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is because he went too far on so many issues. He did. Yeah, we're glad that he's gone too. But one of the things that he went so far on was not realizing that punitive carbon taxes were going to create a major inflation crisis, a major affordability crisis, which caused interest rates to go up, which caused young families not to be able to buy a house. And as a result, that started seeing, you could almost see it, that as people had their mortgages renewed, then and face those higher mortgage payments, the Liberal level of support kept going down. I actually there's a young economist who actually tracked that. But they were so bent on going in that ideological direction by putting in the things that I mentioned in that video. They have, if you can believe it, they've proposed an emissions cap on oil and gas, which would cause us, it acts like a production cap. It would mean we'd have to shut in production. They wanted us to achieve a net zero power grid by 2030. That's 5 years from now. And in my province, 90% of our power comes from natural gas. Since auto tariffs are very much in the news, there's a policy that we have to start buying 20% of our vehicles as net zero vehicles by January 1st of 2026. These are the kind of policies that are completely unachievable. People realized it, and they ended up giving Justin Trudeau the boost. Now we're in the middle of an election. But that wasn't the only one. My province is, as you may know, does not believe in safe supply of drugs. We don't think there's such a thing as safe supply of fentanyl and crystal meth and heroin. So we've seen this all down the West Coast, not just British Columbia, but all the way through down to California. Just the absolute devastation that has been wrought by policies like that. So we've taken a bit of a different turn. Public safety is really important, yes, and the public has turned in that direction as well. And we're the only province that has come through with policies to protect kids from making choices about their gender before they're old enough to understand the consequences of it. You've probably, yeah. So we wanted to make sure that teachers couldn't get in the way of kids and their parents. Parents have to be informed about what's going on with their kids if they want to change their pronouns. We won't allow for young people to get hormone blockers or surgeries when they're minors, and we're going to allow for women and girls to participate in biological female-only sports as well. So those are some of the things that we've done. Thank you. And I think those are the same policies that you've seen and the same issues that you've seen cause just severely normal people to say enough is enough. That's been happening in Canada as well, mostly in Alberta, but it has been spreading elsewhere.
So are you seeing the trend of conservatism in upswing in Canada overall? I mean, I first met Jordan Peterson, who now works with us at Daily Wire, among other places. Peterson Academy is also a great organization. And Jordan, I first met Jordan actually up in Canada at an event in Canada when he was protesting Ontario's Bill C-16, which was, of course, a measure that was essentially designed to make it illegal to speak out against many of the things that you're talking about. And it's been a long time in the wilderness for conservatives in Canada. Do you feel that things are beginning to change at a serious level there?
Well, I certainly felt that way about 4 months ago. Because really, when I was down before, we were talking about the potential for a total wipeout of the Liberal Party. That's how unpopular they had become. That's why they booted their leader out and needed to choose a new one. Kind of like what you saw with the Democrats as well. They knew that Biden, no possible way that he was going to be able to beat your president. And when you do a quick switcheroo on a brand new face, sometimes it gives you a little bit of a surge. That's the point that we're in Canada right now, is that they did a switcheroo on the leader. He is getting a bit of a surge, and our election is going to be April the 28th. But that's the question. Is there going to be enough time for some of those conservative ideas and some of that to come back? That's what we're watching over the course of the next month or so.
What it feels like from the outside, to get to the sort of the elephant in the room, which is of course the tariff war, is that the Conservatives were absolutely set to dominate in this election. Pierre Poilievre was set to win almost an outright majority, I believe, in the Canadian Parliament and just blow out the Liberal Party. And then President Trump decided that he wanted to put tariffs on Canada. And this has led to, a massive upsurge in support for the Liberals, who are portraying Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservative Party, as an ally of those tariffs, even though he is actually an opponent of those tariffs. Is that analysis correct?
I think that, and thank you, because although everybody wanted me to cancel my event with you this evening in my hometown, you have been one of the consistent voices saying, why Canada? Why are we having a tariff war with Canada? I think you can understand why you might have some frustration with China, maybe some frustration with Venezuela. I think you can get that. But Canada, we kind of look at ourselves as your best friend and neighbor. And I think what you're seeing is some hurt feelings. I think we don't understand why it is that this relationship is having the tension that it is right now. So what I would hope, and this is why I like to come to the U.S., is to say that I know that I was talking to some of my table mates about the level of tariffs that we charge on some of our commodities, like dairy and eggs and chicken. And I think it gives the impression that we have these massive amounts of tariffs on all American goods, and we simply don't. We've got one of the largest tariff-free relationships in the entire world. We have about $1 trillion worth of products that go across borders, and the only reason why we have a trade deficit at all is because you buy so much oil and gas from our country. And so if we could get, I think, that understanding, I feel like the Americans have a lot bigger fish to fry. I think it would be much better for us to go back to the same kind of relationship that we had before, whether it's on oil and gas, whether it's on food that goes cross-border, whether it's on our auto parts, which is such a great integrated industry. Those are the things that we're trying to resolve right now, and I'm really hopeful we can have a breakthrough, because I think that we would be so much stronger in supporting each other on the Americans' aspiration of energy dominance, on making sure that it's kind of a North American stronghold, that we can support each other on international security. I would really hope that if we can get to that faster, then I think it might end up stabilizing the relationship.
I mean, just on a factual level, the overall tariff rate that Canada charges on American goods is well below 2%, and that was under a deal that was actually negotiated by President Trump, the USMCA, which was a change to NAFTA. I've said before, with regard to tariffs, that there are excellent reasons to put tariffs. Tariffs can be used for a couple of reasons that can be good. One is for national security purposes. You've seen President Trump do this with regard to very important products ranging from medical appliances to military hardware and attempt to protect industries that are vital to that. That's a good reason for tariffs. You have to protect certain industries. Another good reason for tariffs would be to presumably get other people to ratchet down their tariffs. So if President Trump were to deliver a sort of deal to Canada saying, bring down your tariffs on lumber, bring down your tariffs on eggs, bring down those tariffs, and then we will lower our tariffs as well, I think that would be justifiable as well, because the end goal, obviously, is to get to a lower tariff rate that allows for more trade, cheaper products for the American people, and also a bigger export market for America, because obviously Canada has retaliated against the United States by raising its own tariffs. And I think one of the side effects here that needs to be noted is that if the United States-Canada trade relationship were to go sideways, it's very likely, and Mark Carney is actively attempting to do this, that Canada would really exacerbate its own trade relationships with China. So China would really start to make inroads in Canada as opposed to the United States. I'm very hopeful that President Trump knows all of that, and that this is, again, a sort of Trumpian gambit. We've seen him do this a few times, in which he lays out a sort of very harsh regime of tariffs with a specific goal in mind. Once that goal is reached, he then removes the tariffs because he's actually achieved the goal. You saw this most recently when he did this with the country of Colombia, not the university, which he's also sanctioning, but the country of Colombia, where he threatened massive tariffs unless they were to actually accept illegal immigrants who we were deporting from the United States. I'm very hopeful that is the thing that President Trump is seeking, is an actual answer that will allow both countries to go back to status quo ante, but better.
Well, and I hope so. And what we have found has been successful is that when people like you and other influencers who have the ear of the president are able to make those exact arguments. Because one thing that I'm struck by is when I was down here doing some lobbying a few months ago to try to avoid tariffs, I saw a page from The Economist from recently. They sometimes do these graphics that show you what did the world look like in 2001 and what does the world look like today. And back in 2001, they did this world graphic where all the countries were in blue that had their dominant trade relationship with the United States, and all the countries were in red that had their dominant trade relationship with China. And in 2001, the map was almost all blue. By 2021, it was almost all red, with the exception of Canada and Mexico. And so Canada and Mexico have remained steadfast and strong as friends and allies of the United States. But you're very right. What has happened, and I'll give maybe just a little bit of history, because I know that the president likes President McKinley. And when you go back and look what McKinley did on tariffs back in the 1890s, he was worried about defending the tin plate industry, I guess, at the time. But even back then, I think he knew that you shouldn't tax raw materials and intermediate goods, because raw materials and intermediate goods go into making finished products. You get the value added and all the jobs and the value that go along with that. But what occurred is that the reaction in Canada to the tariff war was to say, fine, we're going to change our trade relationship with Britain. And sure enough, the amount of trade that we ended up doing with Britain ended up skyrocketing. And I believe that the Republicans lost the subsequent midterms after that had occurred because of the backlash that happened in the American economy at the time on the businesses and on the consumers who were impacted by those. So I would just put that out as a caution. I mean, we've already seen it, that when you see this kind of tariff war take place, when we put tariffs on your goods, it hurts our people. When your president puts tariffs on you, it hurts your businesses and your consumers. And you see the impact on the stock market. You see the impact on businesses changing their investment decisions. You see the impact on consumers. And it's just unnecessary. It'd just be much better if we could figure out what are the limited issues that are causing irritants, and then recognize that we just do so much better as two separate nations, having a strong trade relationship.
One of those issues that the president has cited in doing the tariffs has been the lax border security at the northern border. And the reality is that Canada's immigration regime under Justin Trudeau has been quite terrible. It really has. And I wanted to ask you about that. What is Canada's viewpoint with regard to immigration? Because this is a massive issue for the entire West. It was ignored by, I would say, much of what people would correctly term the globalist elite. And I think that term is very often misused, but when it comes to the idea that there ought to be no borders and that everyone has a right to be in the West, that is a perfectly well-used term. There is an elite that basically says there should be no borders, people should be allowed to cross whatever borders they wish and simply live there. That's been taken up. It was taken up by the Biden administration, it was taken up by Trudeau. What do you make of that, and what's the current status in Canada?
Well, I can tell you, there's always a difference of scale. I mean, what you're dealing with on your southern border is as I understood it, up to 3,000 people per day coming across the border.
At some points, it's significantly more. It's up to 10,000 people sometimes.
So you're talking about a problem in the millions. So I can tell you what happened in the last couple of years is that Canada made the decision to end the visa requirement that we had from Mexican arrivals in Canada. And so what would happen, and you've seen it as well, is it's not just farm workers who are coming up wanting to work the fields, right? It's everybody has realized that with the human smugglers that if they can just get to Mexico and either be smuggled across the southern border or hop in a plane and then come to Canada and then get smuggled across the northern border, that's the danger that you're facing. And so what we saw is that we went from having about 4,000 people declaring amnesty when they arrived at our airports, mostly Toronto, Montreal, because that's where our direct flights are from. And it went up to as high as 40,000 last year. So that's I can see why that's a concern. That's like a tenfold increase. But most of those folks are still staying in Canada. There was a difference of folks coming across the border of about 2,000 when the president was in his first term. It went up to 20,000 this time. So yes, you're seeing the trend going in the wrong direction, but it's also an easy problem to fix because it's very difficult to get to Canada. You can't very easily get into a boat and come onto our shore. You can't very easily, if you're crossing, you're already crossing from America because you're in the way. The only other way is to get in by flight. And so we solved that problem. We put the requirement back on for a visa, and we also made sure that people who were coming had a return flight. And the number of people coming in through our ports has gone down dramatically. What I have seen is that, because Alberta, it's also pretty hard to get from Alberta to a major population center because you have to travel vast miles to get to a population center. And so we don't have many people coming across the border from Alberta into the United States. Some of the problems may be in Quebec and Ontario. But I would say that we took the problem seriously. In Alberta, we hired a specialized teams of sheriffs, sniffer dogs, commercial vehicle inspection dogs, all-weather drones. You need those in Canada to have all-weather drones, and also Black Hawk helicopters. And we made sure that we had that presence at the border. And so the provinces have done our part to take that seriously. We also want to solve that problem. We also want to solve the problem of drug trafficking. And it goes both ways. I mean, yes, there's an issue of fentanyl. We're all facing that problem. But we also have crystal meth and cocaine that are coming up from the United States as well. So it's far better for us to realize this is a joint problem that we have of cartels operating all across North America. Share our intelligence, share our resources, and then let's be able to stamp it out. We don't want to. We want to have zero fentanyl also. We don't want a single other person dying of a fentanyl overdose in our country or in yours.
Again, I think that one of the important points here is that if you rewind the tape just a few months, there was a massive conservative movement that was happening in Canada, and it can be again. And I think the obstacles to that need to be removed because it'd be better for the United States to have actual solid allies running Canada than to have some of the schmucks who've been running Canada over the past few years. That's true in Canada, it's true in Europe, it's true in a wide variety of places. So let's work together to get those obstacles out of the way so we can get to a better governed Canada that actually acts as a more solid American ally.
Completely. Well, I think that the president recognizes especially the importance of oil and gas, because we've already seen a couple of things. That when the initial 25% tariffs were to come in, he made an adjustment for energy resources. And that, if you look at the energy emergency declaration, executive order that he signed, that isn't just oil and gas, it's also electricity as well as critical minerals. And so I can tell you the Canadian story on that is my province, as I mentioned, we're just above Montana for those of you who don't know the geography of Canada as well. But our province, we own the resources. I know it's a little bit different in the U.S. In the U.S., your Bureau of Land Management owns most of the land. In Canada, it's the reverse. It's the subnational government that owns most of the land and resources. And so we've got 1.8 trillion barrels of oil, of which 165 billion are recoverable. We've got 1.36 quadrillion cubic feet of gas, of which 146 trillion are recoverable at today's technology. We already ship about 4.3 million barrels a day of oil to the United States, most of it coming from my province. Yeah, we're very pleased. We'd love to double it. We'd love to sell you twice as much. But your refineries are tooled specifically to receive our brand of heavy oil. And if you don't get it, number one, some of the refineries rely 100% on that oil. If you don't get it from us, it means that they could be shut down. If you want to replace it, there aren't very many good replacements. You've got Venezuela as an option and Iran as an option for that heavy oil. We think that we're going to be a better partner for you than either of those two countries. But it's a similar story on anything else that you want to name. We have in Canada all of the critical minerals that are needed. My neighboring province of Saskatchewan, they supply 20% of the world's supply of uranium. Your other options to get uranium are from Russia or Kazakhstan. The Chinese said that there are 3 different types of critical minerals they no longer want to sell to America. Germanium, you can get that in British Columbia. Antimony, you can get that in Ontario. And there's another product, gallium, that you can get from Quebec. Your aluminum, I know that the president wants to start an aluminum industry, but you don't have one right now. You get 60% of your aluminum from Quebec. And so the worry that I have is that I know the American aspiration is to make sure that China does not win this war on critical minerals, on AI, but you need a partner to be able to help provide all of those critical minerals, and we're right here, and we want to do business, and we would like to trade, and it would be far better for us to move to that point of how can we work together to achieve that end, as opposed to watching for months, maybe years, as a tariff war continues on, and that's what I worry about, is that there's a perfect opportunity right now for Canada and the U.S. to work together on energy dominance, on national security, on winning the AI data war, on crowding out China, crowding out Iran, crowding out Russia, and being able to work together on that. But if it does get delayed, you know how terms go. They can switch really quickly at midterms. They can be over very quickly. We might lose the window to be able to do all of that. And I think that would be a real shame if that happened.
Yeah, I think that along some of those lines, one of the things that you were mentioning to me before when we were discussing offline was about the current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and the idea there is that he actually is a particularly bad negotiating partner because he actually is incentivized for this to continue. He actually would like to see it continue because, number one, it's giving him political ballast, or at least political wind in his sails, and 2, he is perfectly fine with doing deals with places like China. And so even if you are interested in getting a better deal out of Canada, what you want is a better partner in Canada to make those deals with.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there is an ideology, as you know, of those who believe that we have to get to net zero as quickly as possible. Mark Carney has been behind the net zero banking move. So he has been going around signing up banks to defund any fossil fuel intensive industry. And so that you can imagine my province, which is very energy intensive, and what that would mean for us if that same ideology was applied, because it's what we've had to experience for the last 10 years. So when you look at where the world is going now, I think most of the world now understands the absolute danger that happens if you do not have reliable and affordable energy. I think that is finally what we've all realized with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with the turmoil in the Middle East, with the acceleration of energy prices, with the instability of power grids. We all now realize that you can't run the world on solar and wind and batteries. And so now is the time really for us to see a switch. I think America's been the first to make that switch. Everybody else is coming on a little bit more slowly. But if you want human flourishment, if you want to be able to do well for your people, you have to have affordable, reliable energy. And when you look at the global scene, you've got 5 billion people on the planet who want to have the same quality of life as we do. And so we have to solve the issue of energy poverty if we're also going to solve the issue of global poverty. So the world is dividing into 2 camps, I think, on that. And I would rather be on the side of human flourishment. I'd rather be on the side of helping to support that kind of aspiration. I'd like to be on the side of that sort of growth, but I don't think America can do it alone. I think that America needs to have strategic partners and valued partners, and I think Canada and Mexico together can be valued partners for America in being able to achieve those broader aspirations.
Well, Premier, I'm very glad that you made the trek down from the frozen north into a significantly better country. And, well, again, I will admit that our aspirations to engulf your country and reverse the results of the Battle of Montreal may go by the wayside. I think that a solid alliance between the United States and better partners in Canada is something that we can all look forward to. Really appreciate your time.
Completely. And we promise not to burn down your White House ever again.